the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes.
Hail to the king, baby.
Boy! The plan is, kill the brain, and you kill the ghoul.
Welcome to hell.
I said, I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains.
Welcome to prime time.
Nice.
And we're in the room, and we're inside.
God, it's big in here. God, I'm big in here. Anyway. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast in the Backseat. I am your humble host and sensual host, Matthew Hutton. With me today I have...
Your co-host Wayne Alexander, who's full of coffee and mischief.
That's always the best way. Today's main topic was going to be on horror film remakes, I do believe.
Tis Squire, tis. It's about remakes. I think it's gonna be a fun one. I'm excited. Should be loads of fun for the children. I wouldn't have the children listening. There is going to be a bit of swearing because I'm really excited about this episode. This is probably going to end up. You fucking.
We've gone R-rated. Podcast in the Backseat after dark. What are you wearing?
Oh, it's going to start going into some sort of weird guttural. Everything's a whisper. You know, it's like sort of like an 80s charity song where you know they're doing something serious when somebody starts whispering into the microphone.
That reminds me. Have you seen that episode of Family Guy where Peter's doing a radio announcement, but it's like a quiet one, so he's just like, and today we're gonna have a song by Madonna, and this episode's being sponsored by I don't know, coffee or something. He's like, I'll take a drink. There you go, crackers too, and he just starts eating it really slowly. That is good.
Oh, but yeah, just sort of bit of Peter. Oh, I'd love to be able to do a Peter, but he's a horrible man. But I think that's part of it. It's like the bit where he does like the butt scooting across there. It's just
so bad.
It's just sort of creepy.
Quagmire as well.
But yeah.
He's the fucking best. There's always one episode I always quote with Quagmire where they're doing that dating reality TV show, and all you hear is during the announcement, you hear him in the background going giggity, 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 and then somebody goes, put some pants on, and he just goes, shut up.
Wow! He's like, guys, we don't. Oh, he's running a cash. You take a card, and then he bends over, and obviously. I suppose you wouldn't realistically be able to get away with that for a couple of reasons. A, it's probably not appropriate in today's day and age, and second of all, it's contactless. It'd be
exactly. Follow the old
male and female strippers.
Yeah,
but like male and female strippers just might have like a little, just that tattoo of those like 3 or 4 lines just in a curve, and just going. Beep.
Just scan the barcode they've got tattooed on their face. Not that we should tag the never mind.
Problem discovered in bagging area.
It's too full.
So it's too full. Oh yeah, so remakes.
That's right, remakes.
Horror remakes. Yeah, so I think sort of in the spirit of the podcast we've been trying to sort of like remain within the confines of ones that we enjoy.
Yeah.
We will continue to be funny today. So yeah, it's about ones that we think are fun or have added value or have something different to say, despite the fact that it's a remake. And I'm gonna backpedal a little bit to say despite the fact that it's a remake. I think there is a lot of really good remakes out there that have done something completely different.
Yeah.
With the source material or like the framework for the movie, and it might be that it's the same movie in title alone.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that there's a lot of connotations. As soon as you hear the word remake, there's an eye roll almost immediately later. But
remake, reboot,
yeah,
refresh,
yeah, Like,
I don't know what the other word was going to go. Reaction, reanimator. I don't know. I was just you got stuck. What?
Repossessed.
But yeah, repossessed. Repossessed is a great movie.
It's so good.
You get it's such a fun movie. With the wrestling commentated by Mean Gene Okerlund and Jesse the Body Ventura.
Nice.
Talking about the anti-gravity backdrop. It basically just recuts the wire, which is keeping what's her name? Reagan?
I think so, yeah. I'm terrible with names.
Yeah. But you don't care. She's just the one that is a monstrous use of a crucifix.
Yeah.
And loves was it pea soup?
Yes, apparently so. Yeah.
That's what you
Whose mother's sews socks in hell.
That she does. But I never knew that it's the mother from, I think we've mentioned previously in The Exorcist. The mother from The Exorcist is the mother from Requiem for a Dream.
Oh yeah, you mentioned. Yeah.
She's the lady who becomes addicted to slimming pills and thinks she's going on this game show.
Yeah.
But is she really? With Jared Leto and Jennifer Connelly and it's Marlon Wayans. Wayans.
Nice.
I got it.
Nice.
But yeah, so remakes worth a visit.
Yeah.
What would?
Well, they're always thought of as like lazy. That's the thing because it's an idea that's been done before. But when you actually think of it from a filmmaker's point of view, the way I was thinking about it anyway, is that there's a huge trend at the moment for that because it's already got an established audience. So everybody who liked the original is going to go and see it. Plus, there's going to be new fans. So it makes sense to do, but I can see where the lazy thing comes in, and we're probably not even going to go into too many bad remakes, if at all, really. We're going to keep it good. But how would you, if you don't mind me getting the ball rolling on questions even, how would you describe a good remake? So what does it need to do to justify it?
I think, you know what, I think it's one of those ones where like a remake is worth a visit because it has something different to say, or it takes the formula that exists and then does something completely different with it.
Yeah.
So there's certain ones that sort of kind of like the first one that jumped to my mind as far as like a remake that I thoroughly enjoyed was Dawn of the Dead, which I think came out 18 years ago. So directed by Zack Snyder, who I have a lot of love for based on the back catalogue of work that he's done. And it was written by James Gunn, who directed and I think he wrote Slither. He's done Guardians of the Galaxy, he's doing the new Suicide Squad movie, etc. But yeah, you can tell it's a very whip-smart remake, and it doesn't try to recreate the shambling zombies. It's more these zombies had a bit of coffee and they're gunning for you. And I don't think it tries to it doesn't try to recreate the social satire or the like sort of the social commentary that the original one did. It sort of takes the framework and then does something different with it, and I think that's loads of fun to watch. And I think even stuff like the soundtrack's fun, because the original one, as much as it's a great movie, I love the original Dawn of the Dead, but I think that the remake's a lot of fun. And the soundtrack's by like Richard Cheese, like a cover of Disturbed's Down with the Sickness,
so
but it's like a swing dance version, and I think every song is a reference to either sort of zombies or some sort of dark theme that can be interpreted as something else. I think one of them's like a stereophonic song off the top of my head. I think it might be Maybe Tomorrow or something like that. And it's very clever in the fact that like, even like the opening tracking shot that immediately says it's not messing about.
Yeah.
And it's doing something different, and it's very fast paced, and even the bit where the camera pans up and you see the whole of the city and the town as she's driving away from the opening act, everything's on fire, everybody's getting wiped out, and you're just going like, the scope of this is really, really good.
Yeah.
But I think that's one that jumped into my mind. Sort of, I didn't want to go into it too much, but it had something different to say.
Yeah.
And it was fun, and it did nods to the original, but it did its own thing.
Yeah. Like you don't have to. It doesn't rely on you having to see the original for it to still be quite fun.
Yeah, and if it's a bit like anything. It's a bit like people talked about the Ghostbusters kind of reboot or remake or whatever it was. If that encourages people to go back and watch the original, I'm all for it.
Big ad.
You've got people that are already bought into it, and you are going to people who are going to poo-poo the idea straight away. But I loved the remake. I thought it was fun. It was exciting. I was guilty of saying, what's the point? The original's been done so well. It's got so much to it. This cast is phenomenal. It's loads of fun. What are they going to do with it? And I really, really enjoyed it, and it felt more tense to a certain extent. What about yourself? What would you consider to be a good remake?
Yeah.
What would not necessarily not the specific movie, but what do you think makes a good remake?
Yeah. I'm going to piggyback on one of your ideas when you were saying about, because the main thing, as you've already mentioned, is to bring something new to it. And one way you can do that is with the likes of Dawn of the Dead. The ideals of the original don't quite sit the same anymore. Obviously times change, so themes should change, and I think that's important. If you're remaking it and you're updating your themes or what message or you want to convey using a story, go for it. Absolutely great idea. And it doesn't try to improve upon the original at all as well. There's a lot of remakes that will fall down because they will do a shot for shot remake, and we mentioned the Psycho remake on the last episode, I think, where it is line for line, shot for shot, different actors, just not done as well because you're not Alfred Hitchcock, basically. And I just don't understand those ones so much because you're bringing nothing new to the story.
I think I can appreciate it, but somebody tasking me with that, there's not enough money for me to be able to say, you know what, I quite fancy remaking one of the most established and well-known horror films. Soundtrack alone, before you see a single frame, all you hear is like 3 seconds of that score, and you're immediately taken to that particular scene or that entire movie. It's so well crafted and so well done, and it's still really, really well done. Yeah, it's not dated. The time frame in which it takes place, it's going to remain the same, but it's still very, very well done, and it's timeless. But yeah, I wouldn't fancy being asked to remake any of those kind of ones.
Just a little segue as well. That's one thing I've always, it bugs me a little bit about movies these days, and more so with horror movies. Whenever you set something in modern day or present day, which you're going to do, which is fine, and this is just a pet peeve of mine for some reason, you have to address the issue of mobile phones. I kind of miss the days where that wasn't a thing, where you're watching Friday the 13th and you think, oh, these people are in trouble, because now you have to have a scene where they're looking at their phones, no bars. I don't know why I brought that up.
There's one that sort of what it kind of reminds me of is, have you seen It Follows?
Yes, it's amazing film.
It's David. It'll bug me because it sounds like David Mitchell, but it's not. I think it's David Mitchell Gordon or David Gordon Mitchell or something like that. I could be wrong. I could be slurring a couple of more modern directors together. But that one has a timeless quality to it because she's reading the book from like what looks like a clamshell. It looks like a compact for like putting your makeup in. But she's reading a book off of it. But whenever they go to the cinema, it's organ music playing and it's a black and white movie.
Apparently,
it's like an old school stuff.
Everything on their TV as well, when they're sat there watching the television, they're all black and white films as well.
But it's got more modern day, say, station wagons with a wooden paddling, which I would love to have personally because it's just very cool.
Yeah.
Cool as fuck. Reminds me of like Harry and the Hendersons. Loads of movies that's where that kind of takes place. Even like the opening of Lethal Weapon 2, where he scrapes up the side of the car because he said he can get it into the small gap. And then Riggs has to backtrack and go, it was. The gap was too small. Cars ruined within the first 20 minutes of the movie.
I'm sure one of them is just too old for this shit. I don't know which. I don't know which, but I'm sure.
But yeah, I think it's one of those ones where that has a timeless quality about it, and that's very, very clever as to what they've done, because you can't place it. It's got 80s elements to it, it's got 70s, it's also got like stuff from the 50s, but it also seems to be quite modern day, and their approach to casual sex and sexuality. And not to say that those things didn't happen, but it seems to be quite sort of modern day. But even the score, the soundtrack, etc., is really, really clever because it doesn't. it dates the film, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
Which then makes it timeless. So I think that film is going to stand the test of time because it's not set in a particular era, because it kind of seems to almost takes place like an alternative reality or an alternate universe where mobile phones don't exist.
Oh, it's a good movie. Now you mention it, I kind of want to watch it again.
And it's got something different to say as well. And I think we talked about where we're going to do like metaphor or metaphor horror, and how that can change over time, etc. But yes, remakes and even addressing mobile phones, that's difficult to kind of do,
especially if you're remaking as well. Like if you're doing something, I'm pretty sure, because last night I watched a few Friday the 13th movies, I'm not going to lie, and the remake, because I kind of enjoy it. Like, I really do enjoy it. But there's a few scenes I noticed where they have to address the mobile phone situation, and that was made in 2009, so mobile phones weren't even, well, they were around obviously, but they're not smartphones. But not
to the extent as to where you would be able to like do the things that you can with it with the
Instagram your death and that, yeah. But
this guy's chasing me. He seems really determined. You know,
he's got back up.
He's all up in my purse. Oh no. He's wearing some sort of dated 80s mask. Oh, what's going on? It's a bit full. Oh, he's stabbing me.
And if the cast of the Friday the 13th remake would like to use their Instagram to check out our Instagram, they can certainly do that. Smooth.
That was slick. Yes, if you wish to follow us on our Instagram page, it is @podcast in the backseat. I repeat, @podcast in the backseat. We're in the process of getting a delicious logo, something that'll be haunting, hopefully timeless, like a certain Jimmy Savile. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. He's haunting. He's timeless. Yeah, but maybe I don't know. I'll be interested to see if that stays in.
Oh no, I'm not continuing on that. I'm sure he said that as well. So
he probably did. He's a horrible man. We don't wish him well. Yes, and may bugs feast upon his rotting flesh. So we've
on a darker note, though, remakes.
But yeah, it's interesting, the whole idea of trying to address movies with having to address the mobile phone in the room. And you get away with that in older movies because it wasn't a thing.
Yeah. But I think that's honestly all remakes need to do, is to just not step on the toes of the original, bring something new to the table, and update your ideals and concepts. Obviously, we've mentioned earlier, horror films 99% of the time have a message to tell. They're not just about a guy trying to kill a bunch of people. If you actually read into it a bit more, so update that if you need to.
Yeah, as you said, like, things change, times change, so you've got to kind of roll with the times. And plus, as well, if you just retread the original, it's kind of a waste of your and everybody else's time.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, it'd probably be a fun ride to watch, but it's not going to be worth revisiting. Whereas the likes of the ones that we've mentioned beforehand have something different to say, like the Dead trilogy, the initial trilogy, which is like Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, and Day of the Dead. They all have something different to say, and it's really, really clever. And you can go back and watch it, and you can take it at face value, or you can look for this kind of subtext that sort of is thread the whole way through the movie, which is very, very clever. And I think you kind of have to do that now. Little nods to the original as well. I think that's very clever as well. One we mentioned beforehand, Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah.
Shaun of the Dead has little nods to the original. We're coming to get you, Barbara, and Barbara's the name of Shaun's mother. Bits and pieces like that. Yeah, you can do little nods, little winks, little homage, a little tip of the hat to the original.
Camera wink to the old fans. Like, essentially.
You remember this? Do you remember the 40s? There's certain ones, like there's a lot of ones I can think off the top of my head. So we've covered Dawn of the Dead. I'm gonna have to revisit that because that was a lot of fun.
Sorry about that, folks. Although you guys probably won't know that we've had technical issues, but the pubes are now gone.
So many.
Where were we though? It was remakes, surely.
Yes, I think we're talking about ones where other ones aside from Dawn of the Dead, where we've really enjoyed a remake. So, what would be another fun remake that you've thoroughly enjoyed?
Mm-hmm. Well, I've actually listed a few, and there was one or two when I was thinking about it. I think I went a little bit outside of the box. Hopefully.
Whoa! Not allowed. It all happens within the. It stays in the box. It doesn't go anywhere else.
It's like, do you know how you eat your hula hoops and you just ram them in, crunch down on them? No, me, I like to lick around the edge and thrust my tongue into the middle. Dance around that box with your dick out. So anyway, the fine line that I was thinking about in terms of remakes were, would you class adaptations as a remake? Because when you consider a lot of movies, especially when they come out, are adaptations from a source material, usually books or comics, or even sometimes internet ideas such as Slender Man and the like. So one of the ones that I thought of, and one of my all-time favourite movies, is actually Dracula 1958 with Christopher Lee. Technically a remake. The first vampire or Dracula movie to come out was Nosferatu. So would that be one?
I don't know. You pose quite a
conundrum.
A conundrum. Question. Answer me these questions 3. Question the first. But yeah, that's really good.
But you could, because if you count, which another choice of mine was It Part 1 and 2. Is that a remake as well then? Because if it is, Dracula certainly is as well.
What was the one that you mentioned beforehand?
Which, the Dracula one?
Yeah, so you said part 1 or part 2?
Oh no, sorry, It the Clown, as it were. It Chapter 1 and Chapter 2.
Oh.
So if that is classed as a remake, which I probably would, theoretically.
You're a fucking snake. Yeah, I wasn't expecting this one, I had questions I thought I was going to throw you off with, and you throw me under the metaphorical bus that's on fire. Do you know what? I would say no.
More of an adaptation than a remake, maybe.
Yeah, I think when it gets to the point of where it's maybe public domain, like you could make an adaptation of Sherlock Holmes. I think we've talked about this beforehand, that it's one of the most remade shows, or remade characters or episodes or books or adaptation, whatever way you want to look at it. It's one of the most 47 Ronin. That is one of the most remade stories ever. There's dozens of adaptations of the same thing, but I think it's. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I think it's different if it's a remake. Yeah. I think if it's more honest with itself, it's a remake of the movie, rather than. I'll give you a good example. So, they did Chuck Bronson, good old Charlie Bronson. I think it's a canon film, so it's Golem Globus. If anybody is listening, there is a fantastic documentary called Electric Boogaloo. And it talks about the making of the canon movies, Golem Globus. There's two guys, instead of making what most studios would do, like say Warner Brothers or 20th Century Fox or Universal, they would make maybe like 3 or 4 big movies for the year that would then get released. Golem Globus, they made like 15 or so movies a year, and every movie that they would sell the rights to, that would go to fund the previous movie that they were still filming. And they made, I believe, the original, or at least the sequels anyway, of the Chuck Bronson Death Wish movies.
Yeah, nice.
So Death Wish is based on a book, and then they remade the adaptation rather than a remake of the movie with Charles Bronson, called Death Sentence, with Kevin Bacon, directed by James Wan. That's a phenomenal adaptation of the book, but I wouldn't say it's a remake of Death Wish, because they're two completely different movies. And I think it's the framework is similar, or the idea of revenge after losing a family member or whatever, and then deciding to take the law into your own hands. But I would say it's a different visit to the same source material, but I wouldn't say it's a remake.
Yeah.
Is that enough of an answer for you?
I would absolutely. I think that's great. I think there's an old adage. I can't remember who said it because I'm not that smart. But he was talking.
I believe
about
was it Mahatma Gandhi?
Probably.
Or was it?
He was always talking. He was.
Or I believe it was the Buddha. Once said. I think that's how you were quoting the Buddha. Adam West once said. Go ahead, as you were saying.
Oh yeah, that there are only 7 stories to tell. Now, if you break down a story into its elements, that's absolutely true. So technically, everything is a reimagining or a remake of each other, if you want to get funny about it. But we're not here to be funny, obviously. Nobody here is laughing. Oh. But yeah.
I would go one further, and this is me stealing lines from the Amazing Spider-Man. There's 7 stories, and then somebody tells you there's less than 7 stories. And one of the characters, I think it's the teacher at the very, very end of the movie, is there is only one story, and that is, who am I?
I'm Batman.
I'm not trying to say he's Batman, but I've never seen him or Batman in the same place. That being said, I've never seen Batman beforehand, unless you're talking about an adaptation. In that case, I'd probably say Kevin Conroy's Batman. But Ratman, imagine that. Imagine Batman, but they just took a different flying rodent. I'm flying Fox Man. It doesn't have
flying
the same.
Squirrel Man.
It's Platypus Man.
I'd watch that. Could you imagine? What am I? Marsupial? Anyway.
I think I lay eggs or live. I don't know. But yeah, I'm trying to think of like Marsupial Man. Oh, he's gonna attack you and then put you into his little wet embryonic pouch and grow you. I don't know.
Marsupial Man uses confusion. What type of animal am I? My God, he's right.
He's Opossum Man. He just plays dead and then waits for them to walk away in disgust and stabs him in the back.
That reminds me of when I was at school. I was always into comics, obviously. And I invented a character which it seemed to offend someone. I don't know why they were really angry. And not because they know somebody who... And you'll see where I'm going with this when I tell the story properly. Who was going through what this superhero was. But the character's name was Terminal Illness Man. And his entire power was that he would make the villains feel sorry for him because he's dying and just give up. But I drew an entire comic as well, and his sidekick was Life Support Machine Boy, which just beeped. Anyway, horrible people aside, that's another thing in terms of remakes. Would you class The Evil Dead 2 as a remake of the first one, technically?
I probably the best person to pose the question to would be the people that made it.
Yeah, true. Absolutely.
I know that seems like a cop-out. You could even say, who are we? But 2 gentlemen who decided that we're going to discuss movies here, we decide that it's a remake or if it's a continuation. I think that's a really good example, because who's going to do a better remake than the people that made the original? You know what? I made my original movie as a student movie. I want to do that movie, but I'm going to straddle that line between comedy and horror.
I hear tell the original director of American Werewolf in London was going to remake an American Werewolf in London. I'd be very interested to see that. To be honest,
it was his son Max Landis was going to remake it.
Well, so fair enough.
Yeah, who better than the director of Schlock and loads of phenomenal films decides he's going to remake his own movie.
In the same vein as well, in terms of Dracula you mentioned there, and It, the clown killer creature, The Thing remake.
Oh yeah, I've got a poster in front of me here called because in Germany it's called Das Ding.
What does that mean?
would you believe it's actually pronounced Smith? No, it's The Thing, and it just says this. I'm going to do this with a flawless Bavarian accent. It's Das Ding aus Einer anderen Welt, which is probably where the what's the tagline for the movie? Be afraid. Where the safest place is man.
The warmest place or something, is it? The warmest place to hide is man.
Yeah. But it could be that it's got a different tagline for the movie. But I love a good foreign movie poster, especially the ones where they've been just slapped together. It's like pre-Microsoft Paint, and they've just went, "What's it about?" Aye, that'll do. That'll do, pig. That'll do. That'll do. But yeah, the thing. Yeah,
I'd love a Norwegian poster for it. It's not called The Thing. It's called We Told You.
I told you. The guy with the ski mask and the goggles and the hand grenades and the rifle. He told you, but would you listen? No, because you're monolinguistic. You only speak one language. But apparently the movie's ruined for people who were from Norway, because it's like, that's. Hey, spoiler alert, guys. That's our dog. Imagine that the film would have been so short. Oh, go on, that's our dog, alright? Oh, that's it. Fuck it. Oh shit, that dog's dead. Alright, let's burn it. Movie's over. It's like the Towering Inferno, where somebody just goes, somebody should put that out. Alright, let's get. There we go. You know what? This big tall building's not on fire anymore. Oh.
Or if they listen to Ripley and Alien, just be like, those four people in quarantine have been ripped to shreds. Open the airlock, fuck them.
And imagine like sort of Ripley turns around to the rest of the crew, and we'll say they got space scurvy and died, so we had to eject them. So everybody all right with that? We only just have to share, do the shares. It's myself, I believe it's Yaphet Kotto.
Yeah.
You get Harry Dean Stanton, and a couple of other people going, "Hey guys, there's less money for us to share out. Dallas,
yeah,
less of that. Shh.
Yeah.
Oh, and that fell over there. Not to give any spoiler alerts. He's one of them cyborgs.
You've got there's Ash as well, who's constantly going on. It's the perfect organism. Pikachu, go! Anyway, but yeah, no, the Thing falls under that category of Dracula. It's an interpretation. It's closer to the source material. Who goes there by God knows who. I've got it. I've read it. It's good.
But yeah, Evil Dead. That poses a good question. But possibly the best people to ask would be the people who made the movie in the first place.
I would love to hear from them. Absolutely. Like, if Sam Raimi ever made contact on our Instagram, I would make a video of myself crying reading it. Send it to him and then never hear from him again.
Crimaxing, face about 2.5 inches away from the webcam, sweating profusely, a nice bit of flop sweat, some little bit of the dribble coming from the nostrils into your mustache.
I am so sorry. Blowing nose bubbles.
Crimaxing.
Funny you should say that. That was another direction I wanted to go as well. Would you class remake, and probably is going to be the answer, if it's an adaptation of a non-English speaking film? So the likes of The Grudge, which I would arguably say is better than the original. Very arguably say.
I'm shocked and appalled, and I'm going to be sickened in my own score. No, I would still consider it a remake.
Yeah.
Because I think that the first one's accomplished, and then the second one, would you say that the remake is better because you're able to digest it a little bit more due to the fact that maybe you understood the first one fully, and the remake is in the language in which you speak?
I hope not. I'll be honest, because I do, especially with the original being Japanese, I grew up watching an awful lot and do actually speak quite a little bit of Japanese as well. Because of that, which sounds silly, but I did actually watch too many, to be perfectly honest with you, and I just didn't want to read subtitles anymore. So I learned, but with The Grudge, I honestly just think it's shot better, which sounds horrible.
I've got one for you.
He had a hand in it though, didn't he?
Yes, I think it was when he was like a producer on it. I think there's quite a few movies in and around that era, where he was like a producer on the movie, and I think he just sort of has a look at it and going, it could be scarier. We could do this, that, and the other, or it could be I would love to know the ins and outs of it as to why he was involved in it or how he got involved in it, or maybe they just thought, we really like this guy, we want to keep him on board, and then sort of maybe he can just give some notes.
No,
I've got one for you. Dracula, the 1930s original with Bela Lugosi. There was 2 films shot at the same time. There's the English-speaking one and there's the Spanish-speaking one. Is either a remake of the other?
That's very interesting as well. Arguably, they're both a remake of Nosferatu again, though. I guess.
Have you ever seen the remake that I was going to call him Gus Van Sant? It's not. It's German director Werner Herzog did it. I believe in the 70s. He did a remake of Nosferatu.
I've heard very good things. I've not actually seen it. Apparently, it's vicious.
I'm vicious.
I know.
From behind a keyboard. I'll give you such a written tongue lashing. I don't know. But yeah.
He's a keyboard warrior. I mean, you're not really, to be fair. I don't know why that was Dream Warrior, but changed cleverly.
Yeah. So yeah, that's it. That was one I thought that maybe sort of.
That is interesting. Yeah. So did they release on the same day almost, or?
I don't know. All I know is they were filmed at the same time. I think one was shot during the day, and then I think the Spanish remake, the Spanish version was shot at the same time at night. But I think the Spanish version's better because it has like tracking shots. It takes a little bit more sort of risks. Bela Lugosi did both.
Nice. Can't imagine. I mean, the line's starting to blur a little bit on what actually constitutes an actual remake, I suppose, which is interesting, to be fair. So you've got a lot of people, and I'm guilty of it, that whinge about remakes. Half the time you might not even know you're watching one. Arguably, with The Thing, I wouldn't probably class that as a remake, but you can technically class that as a remake. That's definitely one of my all-time favourite movies. I cannot say I don't like remakes.
Is it one of those ones you reckon a certain amount of time has to pass before it's not a straight-up remake?
Yeah, quite possibly, yeah. But even then, the remake of Psycho 1960, the original, to 1990 something or other for the remake, that was ages.
Yeah.
It's still a remake.
But I still think that particular movie was still zeitgeist. It was still... Even people who had never seen the movie knew that music.
Yeah.
Or knew of that scene. I think there's certain ones that are implanted in people's brains or born with them. Certain ones where
the twist, even like.
Well, they're not. Maybe I wouldn't want to ruin that.
The best example for time passing as well is 1938 King Kong, all the way up until the recent King Kong remake, which is technically a remake in the lightest possible terms because no elements of the original, apart from a giant gorilla, are in the more recent King Kong.
Which one? The one with Jeff Bridges, the Peter Jackson one, or the most recent one, Kong Skull Island?
Oh, the most recent one. The other two, the Jeff Bridges one, is an out-and-out remake. They did a sequel, which was odd as well.
Is it Son of Kong or something like that?
It could be, yeah. I remember instead of the Empire State Building at the time, it was the Twin Towers it fell off. And the one with Jack Black, which you mentioned there as well, Peter Jackson one, that's an out-and-out remake as well. Yet the most recent one, it's all about the Vietnam War and all sorts of things. It's kind of weird. I'd still class them to a degree as horror. They're more creature feature, I guess. But that's a subgenre.
Tis a subgenre.
Tis indeed.
Tis and it tisn't. But yeah, it was sort of. I thought that was quite an interesting one.
I'm very looking forward to Kong and Godzilla's Barney.
Just pure smashing each other's faces in.
Yeah.
For our amusement. But that should be good. That's Adam Wingard. So Adam Wingard, sort of like an indie director, and then they've been given this massive this clash between these two. Without it sounding cheesy, titans.
I mean, that's what they're called, isn't it? I guess. So yeah.
Titans. I think. What was I going to get on to? Thoughts, and remember to remain positive. What about your thoughts of the remake of Texas Chainsaw Massacre? I'm just trying to bring it back to the purpose of our talk. What do you think of the one that came out in the early 2000s? I believe it was.
I've
early
only seen
to mid 2000s.
Yeah, I only saw the first half of it, not because it was poor. Just because I was watching it at a friend's and I had to leave for some reason. I don't think I liked them. Sorry if you're listening.
I'm not. No, don't be. 2003 came out.
Was it? Oh wow. And only having recently watched the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original, again, very recently, forgot how incredibly good that is. Like, it's so vicious and raw. If I'm not mistaken, the 2000s one, it does feel a little bit more glossy.
I would say yes, and I would also say no.
It's like Hollywood vicious rather than visceral.
I'd say it's still. I think it's well done. It does what the original one does, is it doesn't mess about. Like, the guy from was it 6 Feet Under? He's going to be the main protagonist. Whoa, he's taken out. Boom. Yeah. Dragged into the basement. Friar tucked. That's him. He's done. And then you've got the other people. There's somebody sitting on the meat hooks. You've got the female. You've just got the lead of the movie, Jessica Biel, and it plays it like a big chase movie. And I think it's incredibly well done. And it's got a phenomenal cast. It's got Jonathan Tucker, who is massively underused. He was phenomenal in Hannibal. He's the one that tries to kill Hannibal in season 2, I believe, of the TV show. Yeah. Mike Vogel. It's got Eric Balfour. It's got Arlie Ermey. I'm all on board for it with, and he plays like the crooked sheriff. I think he's part of the Leatherface's family to a certain extent. Yeah. Almost to the point where I think he's like the matriarch, but it's still. It feels sweaty. It feels horrible. It feels disgusting. It's got a really good aesthetic to it. And everything else, but yeah, that's one of those ones that I really, really enjoyed, and it's different. It's different enough from the original that I still had fun with it. I would still say that the first one is much better. Yeah, but the other ones is really, really well done. I really, really enjoyed it.
One it always reminds me of was one I mentioned earlier was the Friday the 13th remake. I honestly love that film. The remake, it's really good. It might as well be a sequel. If you cut out the first 5 minutes where you see Mrs. Voorhees, which other films in the sequels do anyway, they recap. You could just look at that as a recap. He does get his mask later on, but he might have lost it. Is it a sequel? Is it a remake? It's definitely a remake, but none of the characters in it. I'm sure the main girl in the first one's called Alice. They're not named. It doesn't matter.
They're just essentially fodder. I know it sounds really bad, but it's just fodder. Interesting fact for you: the Friday the 13th was directed by the guy who directed Texas Chainsaw. It's a Texas Chainsaw Massacre guy went on to direct Friday the 13th. Yeah. Marcus Nispel.
Did he also do the Freddy one, the Nightmare on Elm Street remake?
He could have
a hand in it. Have a clawed hand in it.
He did not. He did Texas Chainsaw Massacre, a couple of Bone Thugs and Harmony movies, Faith No More, Pathfinder, Conan the Barbarian, and his most recent film was The Asylum. But he did not direct that one. I'm going to have a brief...
I think it was interesting to see as well the remake of Nightmare. Of course, our next show is going to be the original. We're going to review the original. So it's nice to be able to talk about the remake as a precursor, I suppose. But they took it in a very different direction, which I do believe was the direction they kind of wanted to take it originally, but couldn't, due to the limits at the time. well, due to recent cases apparently at the time, which I'll not go into because it's not a very nice topic, I suppose.
Child murder.
Yeah, and more.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll leave it at that.
Exactly. But that's why in the original Nightmare, everybody gets this wrong as well. Freddy is only a child murderer.
I think that there's a lot of misunderstanding there.
Yeah,
he's a tinker. He's killed some teens, and some people decide to take the law into their own hands, and he comes back. Exactly.
But the remake does take it a different way, and I think that's important because it means you can separate them.
I think you and I discussed this separately from the podcast. That one of the interesting aspects, I think they took it out for the remake, is the remake was going to have this. I think it has this thread that he didn't do it. He didn't kill the kids.
Yeah.
And the reason why he's come back, he's so pissed, he's so annoyed they got burnt to death for something he didn't do. He was just like some sort of janitorial guy, works in a boiler room, gets framed for a murder. Somebody decides to bump him off with a bunch of other people, and he decides to come back and haunt the kids. The parents.
That was my biggest criticism of the film, was that they backtrack on that idea. I thought that would have been so interesting to have him as a sympathetic character.
Yeah, you would totally your focus would shift. You're going, you know what, Frederick Krueger is what? He's going to go out and just sort of
just fuck him.
Basically punish and take out their firstborn.
Yeah,
and that's really good, and that would be an interesting going. I'm siding with the killer. Generally, that doesn't happen until further down in the series because it's just more and more people getting bumped off. And you just want them to say the one-liner or do the interesting, fun kill, etc. I think that one, I would have loved for them just to stuck with that and being brave, but obviously that wasn't to be. Thinking of other remakes, Child's Play.
Yeah, I was going to mention. Yeah, it's a great remake.
Mm-hmm.
In the same vein, it's different. It's just different enough with the same sort of elements. The Good Guy doll, which has been changed, I forget what it's called. It's a different company. But instead of having the voodoo element in it, it's more of a story on technology. So as we mentioned before, changing your themes or updating your themes to more recent ideals, that's exactly that. Instead of looking back to where religion was a heavy influencer in the 80s, now everything's all technology.
The dark arts turned into the modern day version of dark arts, which is like artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
It's like small soldiers, but with the gloves off.
God,
and I think I was thinking as well, because small soldiers, you could realistically make that into a straight up horror, and it would be brilliant. It would be high body count, quip lines, somebody getting shaved in the neck with a kitchen fork,
or like demonic toys. Did you ever see that?
Was it Puppet Master? Isn't it one called Puppet Master?
Yeah, they also did a movie called Puppet Master versus the demonic toys.
There's a couple of ones like that. There's like
Baby Oopsie Daisy.
Was it The Ginger Dead Man?
Oh, God, I've always wanted to watch that.
There's a couple of sequels that's done by Gary Busey. And I think, not to try and be negative towards anybody, I think it was just Gary Busey being Gary Busey. He just stumbled into a recording booth and went, just say these lines. I'm going, I was going to say them anyway for free.
It's funny, this is just my diary.
This is just reading from his diary, reading from Gary Busey's The Good Book. And if he is listening, and I hope he's not, please don't hurt me.
Please don't kill me. Please don't Gary Busey me.
Did you know like Buseyisms? So like knife stands for killing, not inflicting. I don't know. It's just basically just turns that into what's it called, an acrostic.
Yeah.
Board means blah blah blah. Just Buseyisms. But Ginger Dead
Gary.
He's done it again.
But there's a really interesting remake as well when we're on about different types. Now, I don't know if you've seen the original or the remake, actually, The Town That Dreaded Sundown.
I have not.
I think that's really like the way it's done is quite original, because the original is based on a true case, like a real event, and the film itself features the true event, so it's like a copycat killer. So it doesn't feature it, but it's a copycat killer to the killer itself. Now, the town that it's based in, where the killings actually happened, have a yearly screening around about that time. Okay. And it's done as like a drive-in theatre thing. It got a lot of shit for it, because obviously the family members of the victims, because it's all about murder and whatnot. Now, the remake features that element. So there's a lot of people watching the original in a drive-in theatre where this mass killer doing the same thing is going around. So it's so incredibly meta. It's very interesting. I actually really loved it, to be fair. And I really I didn't get because the films themselves got a lot of shit, obviously, as well. I don't feel like it's stepping on the true events in any way. In fact, it's really kind of displaying the horror quite well, and I might be digging myself into a hole, to be honest with you. I like the films, basically.
Not the murders.
But not too much.
We've just got to make that clear justification, Mr. Hutton, that you're not sitting talking about, I love the movies, I don't like the thing that inspired them.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So anybody listening, don't go out and kill anybody. And if you do, just don't blame it on the podcast, please.
And if you needed us to have to tell you that, get help. God. The last one that I had written down in terms of remakes that I really loved was Evil Dead.
Evil
Dead? The actual remake, yeah.
Yes. Oh, that is so...
It's so different, yeah.
It's so good.
I just want to lick its ear.
It's tight.
It's tight.
But yeah, it's so good, because it takes the framework. It didn't do what some people thought it was going to do, which is just gender swap the protagonist. It's so different. It takes the idea of, don't go into the basement, don't read the book, don't listen to the recording, don't mess about with anything. She is going. What I like as well is that it has different themes, but it's still the same idea, which is, don't go to the cabin. Yes, I think in the movie, she is trying to detox. She's trying to come off of heroin, I believe.
Yeah.
So everybody decides, like, a sort of like almost like an intervention, like the whole idea, we're going to take her away and she's going to, get better, and we're going to keep an eye on her whilst we're staying in this flea-ridden, mite-infested shack in the middle of nowhere. Like, have these people never seen horror movies beforehand? And that
healthy environment, yeah.
That poor guy. Oh, what we'll do, we'll just unwrap this book, covered in plastic bags and barbed wire. What are you doing? What did you... No!
What's this? Bound in human flesh? Do I?
What? But yeah, it's so well done, and that guy with the glasses just goes through the ringer.
Oh God, yeah, he becomes Pinhead.
It's just, and like I felt sorry for Jane Levy, who plays the protagonist, and I think she's one of the first people to get turned, I believe. Yeah. And it's so visceral and so it's so well done. It doesn't hold back. It's really well done.
Oh, it's so vicious. Like, there's a bit at the very end where she's hiding in the wall, away from the demon, and it's got a big machete or some sort of blade, and it's piercing through the wall because it knows that she's there, but not exactly where. And it cuts back, and she's got the blade like through her cheek, and it just slowly comes back out. And for some reason, it makes me cringe out my butthole. It's
like a rabbit's. It's like a rabbit's nose.
Yeah, for some reason that just feels like, or sounds like it would hurt more than being actually just stabbed in the face. Like, she's cutting her own face off with a glass of a mirror. Like, it doesn't give you time to breathe, that film.
It's so. I in all honesty, I've not revisited it since I watched it the first time around, which is possibly maybe 10 years ago. I could be wrong.
I went to see it at the Pictures, fully expecting to hate it, and I was silent the entire time. Because
it's 8 years old.
Actually, I did say one thing which got a laugh from the row. I had a story before we started recording about my drunken antics in cinemas. I'm not a good person to be with, apparently. But because obviously we've mentioned before, I'm a big fan of Mystery Science Theatre. They do riff tracks now as well, so I'll talk over movies with friends sometimes. Like stupid commentary and things. If you've never seen them, check them out. But I was watching The Evil Dead, and at one point the guy with the glasses goes, "This book doesn't make sense. It contradicts itself from page to page." So I just went, "The Bible," and the row in front of me just started giggling. It's a good film though. Like I would probably put that, if I had to choose, and I'm going to ask yourself the same, a favourite remake. If you can't pick the likes of The Thing, because it's more of an adaptation, I would probably say either The Evil Dead or the Friday the 13th remake are my favourite. Oh, and Dracula 1958, because Christopher Lee, his voice makes me moist.
Moist pubes.
Moist.
But yeah, I think it is a phenomenal one. I haven't watched it since it first came out back in 2013. I would love to revisit it. I think because the previous director had picked the new director, Fede Alvarez.
Yeah.
So he picked him. He says, I want somebody to take the reins and do an Evil Dead movie.
Yeah.
And he passed it on to somebody else who believed in, somebody who was an independent director the same way that he was back in the day. I think it's passing the reins to somebody else.
Yeah.
And I think that is where you got the buy-in immediately from people. You know, it's not just a cheap cash in for people. Oh, we've got the studio has the rights to this movie, we're going to remake it before the rights elapse.
I believe it's produced by Bruce Campbell as well.
Yeah, have you seen the post-credit sequence?
Yeah, I was going to mention it. That when that happened, the entire cinema cheered. He's like, groovy. That's another thing as well with the Evil Dead. They're doing the sequel, which yourself was the one that informed me of that originally. Mm-hmm. Finally, we're getting another Evil Dead movie, and I believe that's because the TV series got cancelled due to pirators.
Rats.
Yeah. Dirty rats, I was one of them. But I have since bought them because that's just what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to own everything with the Evil Dead on it, apparently.
Yeah, you have to. It's a compulsion. But yeah, I think it's really, really good. I'll answer your question later on. Other ones that I've thought of off the top of my head, The Fly. The Fly's technically a remake.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Cronenberg, Gina Davis, Jeff Goldblum. It's a phenomenal film. It takes the themes of the original movie, the mesh of two species in transport pods, and goes a different way with it. And you're kind of sympathetic towards the guy as he sort of becomes less and less human.
Yeah.
And I think it heavily...
I've seen that for years.
Oh, it's a phenomenal film. I was very lucky that we have nearby, we've got these guys called Screen Demons, and they do like sort of showings of movies. I think it's the one that you and I went to see where we saw Reanimator followed by In the Mouth of Madness, because they were both based on H.P. Lovecraft. But yeah, The Fly's a remake, but it goes a completely different way with it. Cronenberg does this phenomenal body horror thing with it. It's overtly sexual. It's really, really well done, but it's a fantastic body horror. And you feel sorry for the guy at the end, and it comes to quite a sort of like a gut-wrenching end. There's a fantastic cameo from the director. He's one of the surgeons whenever they're removing the pupa from Gina Davis.
Nice.
Because he does, like, even David Cronenberg himself, he looks like a Hollywood plastic surgeon. What are the ones? Amityville Horror. I really, really enjoyed that one. That is one of Ryan Reynolds' sort of first sort of solo movies, and it's really unnerving as he becomes more and more overwhelmed by the house. It doesn't try to do exactly the same as the original. I don't think it has anything different to say, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. I
have a weird relationship with the Amityville because I write for a London spiritualist newspaper. I'm the book reviewer there. Mm-hmm. And the little mad segue. If you've never read it, check it out. It's beautiful, psychic world. Check it out. But anyway, in it, my dad as well, who also is at the moment the editor, or one of the editors, got to interview the child that lived in the actual Amityville house.
Okay.
And I know far too much about it, so whenever I watch the movies, and I'm including the original in this, all I'm doing is picking out the inconsistencies, because the whole case with the Amityville was to prove whether or not these people were lying. So when I say the inconsistencies, to me it's just like, well, that's just perpetuating an untruth. In terms of a film, they're both incredibly good. Like the original with Margaret Kidder.
Margot Kidder and James Brolin.
And who apparently didn't get on very well on set. And the Ryan Reynolds one as well, beautifulully shot, and it's very creepy. But all I can think of is the original case. So it's ruined it for me.
Are you the guy sort of pinches those? I think you'll find
actually,
dear points of view.
Yeah.
It was a kitchen knife. It wasn't a steak knife. No, he stabbed him with a butter knife with his left hand at a 45-degree angle. No, yeah.
He actually ripped his tooth out and stabbed him in the eye with it.
It was a hatchet and not an axe. They're two completely different things. It was a tomahawk.
One's for chopping wood, the other's for cutting wood.
It was more of a slashing manner rather than a cut.
Yeah, so I'm that guy.
Oh no, yeah. Other ones, Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Yeah, that was one I was going to mention, and in exactly the same way, The Blob as well, for the same reasons. Yeah,
I love the original. The original is loads and loads of fun, and then the remake's really, really clever. Because I think the director's name is Chuck. It's such an unusual name, but I love how it's got like that whole rug pull that you think it's the jock is going to be the guy who's going to save everybody, and it's not.
Yeah, because he does in the original as well.
It's Kevin Dillon.
Nice.
He's the outsider. He's the guy with like the motorcycle, and he's like a bit of a scrawny, ratty type character. And then he ends up becoming the hero of the movie, and that's really, really well done. And it bumps off a load of people in quick succession. It's so well. Chuck Russell is the name of the director, and it was actually, I think it was produced by Frank Darabont, who went on to do The Mist, Green Mile, Shawshank Redemption, to name but a few. He went on to do The Walking Dead as well, as he was one of the showrunners for the TV as well. Other ones off the top of my head, The Crazies.
Yes, I've only seen the original to that, to be honest.
The remake is really, really well done. Yeah. Loads of fun. What other ones? The Hells Have Eyes. I love, because I'm a huge fan of Alexandra Aja, who started off with Switchblade Romance. The original title, I've told you about this beforehand, it's called like Haute Tension, which is High Tension. Of the two horror film names, which one is a better sounding horror film? High Tension or Switchblade Romance? Switchblade Romance is so much better.
By a mile, yeah.
Which one sounds like it might be a drama set in the 1950s or a murderer with this French trucker guy, looks like a gourmand running around killing people in the house solely because they was there.
Yeah, pretty much, eh?
But that's a, if you get a chance to watch it, that is loads and loads of fun. Directed by Alexandra Aja, and then I've kind of followed his career since then. He's did Mirrors, he did the remake of Piranha, he did the remake of The Hills Have Eyes. He's done a bunch of movies since then, but yeah, it's a really, really uncomfortable watch. What else? Nightmare on Elm Street we've discussed. Village of the Damned, possibly solely.
Of course, yeah.
Christopher Reeve, I think it's got Kirstie Alley in it. There's some really unnerving scenes in it. John Carpenter. Mm-hmm. It's got those kids from the Bloodening from The Simpsons?
Yeah.
You know all your secrets. You want
that
to
bit where she
yourself.
Is that bit where she forces her hand in the hot pot to melt it? And it, when I first watched that, I sort of giggled, and then she gets pulled away. And then does it again, and I'm like, ooh. No.
Stop
it.
Yeah, so what's those are the ones off the top of my head. I'm sure there's absolutely loads. Obviously, we've covered The Thing, and a bunch of other ones where I think they do something different with it. Mm-hmm. Like I don't want to see a retread of the same movie but with better cameras.
Yeah, exactly. Just watch the original if that's the case. Yeah.
I'm trying to think. Yeah. So, what would you remake? That is my question to you, Sir Hutton.
Thing is, you're treading a fine line because there's already a remake for the likes of one of my favourite films is Halloween, and I wouldn't want to tread on somebody like that. I don't want to remake something Carpenter or Hitchcock has done because I genuinely don't think I could do better, and nobody could, in fairness. So I'm trying to think of something that I like that I feel like I could do something different with, and I have actually always wanted to make a movie. I've mentioned to yourself the ultimate goal is, and one of my favourite things are kaiju films, which are a subgenre of horror. They're monster movies. Now, I love Godzilla. I'm not going to make Godzilla because I just feel like it's been remade an awful lot now as well. Mm-hmm. But there is also an English kaiju movie, which not many people know of, called Gorgo. I've always wanted to remake that.
Gorgo. I'm gonna have to check that out. Gorgo.
It's very good, and it's the first time what happens in it, because I don't want to spoil it, happens in a film, because it's a theme that continues as well. Mm-hmm. But that would be mine. I would make it a lot more vicious. Obviously better budget because it came out in 1964, I believe. Mm-hmm. But I'd be interested to hear what yourself would remake as well.
I've asked the question, but I didn't. One didn't think of one's answer in advance. So something where I think they could do it and maybe sort of ramp it up and not pull any punches. I mentioned it before in a previous podcast when he did like comedy horror or almost like kid horror. I would love to see a Gremlins movie remade as a straight up horror. Get rid of Gizmo, or Gizmo gets bumped off immediately. Boom. Yeah. Oh, you think he's going to save the day? Wiped out immediately, cut in half. That's it. Blood all over the pavement or something like that. But yeah, I would love to see a up-to-date remake or sort of reimagining of Gremlins, but as a straight-up horror.
That'd be interesting. Actually.
Practical effects, high body count. But yeah, I reckon that would be quite interesting. Even use the original sets that they have, which I believe is still at Universal Studios, or is it Paramount? Yeah. Or that would be a lot of fun to see for me. Dozens of little gremlins running around, just laying waste to your time.
Your mind immediately goes to the films you love, so you think, "Oh, I'll remake Halloween, or remake The Thing," and then you think, "Oh no, that would be really hard to do or do well."
I'm trying to think of any other ones where you could realistically do sort of.
There's one, because I love the slasher genre as well, and I'd love to see either a sequel or a more up-to-date version of. Have you ever seen the movie Fright?
I have not.
It's Halloween before Halloween, basically, but in between Black Christmas and Halloween, I guess. Mm-hmm. But it's an English film. I can't remember who stars in it. My dad will kill me because he loves her. And the killer in it is he's creepy as fuck. She's again, it's a babysitter, but the father of the child who she's looking after is institutionalized, escapes, and comes back. Mm-hmm. And it's him who is the killer throughout it. And I don't want to ruin the end, but the end itself just leaves you like stunned. Mm. And I don't think I would do that ending for anyone who has seen it. I don't think I would just remake the ending. I would have to take it a different direction. I just think that story itself is creepy.
Good answer.
But I'll stick with Gorgo.
Gorgo. But yeah, I think that would be the one that I would do. I would have Joe. I would have Joe Dante back in hand. I would have somebody else doing the voiceover work for some of the Gremlins. I reckon even people who were fans of it, you'd probably be able to get quite well-known celebrities to do like, right, you're going to do the voice of like a Gremlins type creature in it.
Yeah.
But just keep it as a straight up lizardy, horrible animals going around and just bumping people off. Do they got to make sure they kill that?
Got Stripe holding Gizmo in his hand, just dunking him in a in a vat of water, so he produces millions more.
That's what
and then just rips his head off.
I'm done with you. That's it, Jed.
Or just breaks his neck and throws him in the pond to see what happens.
if he's dead, imagine him just making notes. He's sitting right. Right, doesn't work if they're dead.
Gizmo caca. Spits fire instead of Grim.
You brought me on to my next question, which would be, what do you think is beyond the realms of a remake? Which ones do you think are like, no? What would you say is like...
Honest to God, the one film that I genuinely think if they went to remake it, it would fail. And the first hurdle, and it's Jaws.
Yeah, it's so well established. It was the original blockbuster that came out 76. I think it's 45 years. I think it's 45 years old as of this year, I believe. But yeah, that's.
I think it's too much time, and there's too many films now, like The Meg, which is a great movie, where they've done like shark movies that they're all essentially remakes of the original idea, but in very different ways, essentially. Because if you tried to remake it, everybody would just say, nah, just watch the original. I would have said The Thing as well. But I do believe they are remaking that, so good luck to them.
I wouldn't want to.
No. I'd rather do Psycho than The Thing, to be honest.
I wouldn't want either.
No.
Gun to my head, which one would have worked with it? Psycho, but you know, if you were forced to remake it, make it intentionally awful, make it slapstick to turn it into a musical.
I think the ones for that answer specifically as well, you've got to think if you changed it, which is the only way to make a good remake, in my opinion, would it just piss everyone off if you were to change any element to Jaws or Psycho? So if you were to actually do Psycho where the mother was all along the killer and pretending to be Norman, everybody would just be like, that's shite. Whereas if it was a less well-established film, that's exactly the type of change you need to make.
Yeah, it would be sort of people have revisited so many times. That's the obvious answer, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or would the obvious answer just to remain? It leads you down that path, but you actually find it's all been in his head, and it was actually it was him again, impersonating his mother. Or could you go really, really horrific with it, where he's running about in a suit made from his mother's skin?
Yeah. To goodbye horses.
He's taken out her larynx and he's using it as a duck call, and it just recreates her voice exactly the same as before.
Your dinner's ready.
No, mother.
Mother, no. Chops. I don't know.
So I think there's quite a few there that we've kind of like. Have you seen all the ones I've mentioned? Have you seen them all the remakes?
All apart from the Hills Have Eyes remake. I've not seen that.
Definitely worth a watch. I think even in I knew I was in because the opening bit's like a lot of, because I think it takes place in New Mexico. I could be wrong. Where you see a lot of like explosions, etc., going off, like nuclear testing, which maybe explains as to why the people the way they are, like subhuman people, and why this may be mutated or a bit different or whatever. But yeah, that remake's really, really good. I really enjoyed it, and I think the opening song is "The Man Comes Around" by Johnny Cash, and it just sets the tone. And you see all these black and white footage of like the mushroom clouds and the desert, and it feels hot and uncomfortable. And there's a few cameos from people who were in the original, but it's really, really good if you get a chance to watch that. And it's got quite a satisfying ending as well. I thoroughly enjoyed it, so add it to your list. But yeah, I think I've kind of covered all the ones that you could easily go back and sit and pick apart each movie as is, because like, for example, Invasion of the Body Snatchers has been remade 3 times in recent memory. 4, I tell a lie, the one with Nicole Kidman and Daniel Craig is Invasion. That's a remake.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's ones that I think what we've kind of covered is that you've got to do something different with it. You can't just retread the original.
Yeah, that's if you want to make a successful remake, you've got to keep people interested. If it's a shot-for-shot remake, people will just say watch the original, and rightly so.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to do something different with it. So, is there anything else that you want to add? Anything you want to?
Well, I touched upon pretty much all the elements that I really needed to with that. I like the idea of the difference between a remake and an adaptation. The line becomes a little bit blurred, and I find that quite interesting. But I'm just trying to pick my all-time favourite remake. It's hard, to be honest. Because you can't pick the likes of The Thing again, adaptation rather than remake, maybe. Because otherwise, The Thing straight away.
I think my favourite remake is probably going to be, say, The Fly.
It is good, yeah. I'm going to have to revisit that. I'm tempted to even say Child's Play, you know. I went wanting to hate it because I love Brad Dourif. Yeah. I mean, either Child's Play or, honestly, Friday the 13th remake. Just because I love seeing Jason going around killing people, even if it is in space. One of the sequels. So,
Jason Sex.
One of the best lines in any horror films is in Jason X, and it's where they're talking about the spaceships that's coming to save them. And they cancel the order, and one of them goes, "What? Are you high?" It's so jarring.
I've not watched that film. I haven't watched that movie in years because that came out in and around the same time that they did Freddy vs. Jason, wasn't it?
Yeah, which is a great movie. Like, it's so good.
Oh, it's so much fun.
They're on about doing a sequel to that, and I really hope that's not just bullshit.
They did a comic book on it, which is Freddy versus Jason versus Ash.
There's 2 seasons, and I got the originals, and they're worth a mint now.
And is it not Ash versus Darkman as well?
Yeah, there's loads. Ash vs. Darkman, Vampirella. I've got Ash versus the Marvel Zombies. Now, don't tell Bruce Campbell you've got those because Marvel did not get the rights to his image. That's a bit...
It's a jaw with a shotgun. That's what it is.
Basically. Yeah.
No face, just a jaw with a shoulder strap, chainsaw for an arm and a shotgun.
It does feature Marvel Universe Ash Williams getting his brains eaten by Howard the Duck as a zombie.
I don't know how I feel about that.
I mean, real Ash is there though, so it's fine.
Okay. But yeah, there's loads of ones I'm sure that we've not covered. Anybody who is listening who has only ones that we've left out.
Yeah.
Any ones that we don't realise is actually a remake. Drop us a message on our Instagram page, which is @podcast in the backseat. I repeat, that is @podcast in the backseat. Yeah. I'm excited for any ones that are going to do something different.
Yeah.
With existing material and do something fun and original, or take it further.
I'd love to get a list of your favourites as well, audience.
Horror only though. Anything else, it's going straight in the trash, the garbage, the bin.
Wipe my sweaty arse with it if you send them anyway, just to get that picture.
It's so sweaty. I've seen it.
You can't miss it anyway.
It's like a dragon's nostril.
Smoky with just a wisp of hair. You're welcome. So,
and on that bombshell / haunting image,
thank everyone for listening.
Thank you very much for your time.
Tune in next time, where I do believe we're talking about the original Nightmare on Elm Street.
We are. But I look forward to that. So yeah, we'll look forward to our next review, as Matt says, Nightmare on Elm Street.
I've been Wayne Alexander.
And I've been Matt Hutton. Enjoy your stomach pounder and Coke.
Groovy.